Happy April 9th to everybody. Another snow in Southwest Virginia. Springtime might get here one of these days. Glad we're getting a little moisture though. Hey everybody. Today in this video, a little different than my normal routines. I wanted to explain a little bit to you about the air brake systems. We've got the two buses and my International 4900 that all have air brakes now, so I'm kind of new to learning this. I've been around air brakes and things quite a bit, but as far as learning the specifics on how everything works and how to repair it, I'm kind of getting new in the game at that. And you know, some of you all might be in the same boat I am, or might be considering buying a truck or a bus or something that has air brakes, and you're a little bit unsure of doing the maintenance on them. So I kind of want to go over a few items that you need to know and be aware of as far as maintaining them and if you have problems. Right here we have a rear brake chamber. This has a service brake and a park brake in it. This brake chamber here is just for a service brake. This is for the front wheels, front axle. The front axle does not have parking brake. The rear axles always have parking brakes. And the way this is set up is this side of your canister is your service brake side. When air is applied in here, it fills up behind the diaphragm, which I'll show you the diaphragm in a minute. It pushes that diaphragm forward, and which applies your brake. When that diaphragm pushes forward, it pushes on an end of a rod, pushes this rod out, and that applies your brake. So when you're using your service brakes, your parking brake is deactivated. So what happens, air is applied through this cylinder, fills up the chamber on this side, and there's a big spring in here, and it pushes that spring back, which allows this plunger to freely move, or this rod. So that spring is compressed back here. Well, when you set your parking brake, air is released out of this, and that spring then applies and pushes this rod, which clamps your brakes. You'll have a diaphragm on this side and a diaphragm on this side. This side of your brake chamber is non-serviceable because of that big spring. I have heard different numbers, but I'm not sure, but I know it's got enough pressure to you don't want to mess with it. They used to make these rings where they come apart like this one, but I think some people was taking them apart, trying to work on them. That spring was under pressure and blow apart and severely injure them or possibly even kill them. So you don't ever want to go to cutting or trying to disassemble the parking brake side of a brake chamber. This front side is serviceable. We'll get into that in just a second. Right here is a service brake diaphragm, and what that will do, that will go in here, and it is clamped and sealed to this surface around this ring here. So what happens if this tears somewhere, gets a tear in it, when you apply your service brake, air is going to spew and leak out instead of applying the full pressure to the rod to apply your brakes. So you can take this canister apart right here. You can leave this end mounted on the truck. You can replace that diaphragm and put this all back together. You wouldn't even have to unhook your air hoses. Now, let's say the back half of this goes down and you don't, and all this, your rod and all this front mechanism is good, then you can take this apart and put just this back half, which would be considered a piggyback, on here, and a new diaphragm, and everything's new from here back, and you're still using your old rod and all that. And these rods have to be cut to length when you replace them. They're made long because on some trailer applications, I think they need this long rod, but on a truck, normally it's just pretty short with a shackle on it, and you have to cut those to length. You can also replace this whole thing, unhook it, take it off, cut it, put it all back on new. Kind of depends on the time crunch you're in. So what I did, I bought two of these rear brake chambers to have on hand. I also have a couple front ones, and the diaphragms. Now, you might ask, well, why would you buy that when you're not having problems? Well, here's why. If something happens to this brake chamber and it's leaking, you're going to be losing air pressure somewhere. Either when you're applying your brake, if it's on the service brake side, or if this diaphragm blows out here, you're not going to be able to have air pressure in here to release that spring, and your brakes are going to be set, and you can't move the vehicle. You don't want to be losing air pressure, because if your air pressure gets too low, then your brakes are going to set and you're locked up somewhere beside the road, and you don't want to be locked up beside the road. So that way, in an emergency situation, I've got what I need. I can get it put on, not have to have the vehicle towed home. And with 3 of these units now, I figure it pays to have this kind of stuff on hand. Now, if you need to move it, tow it out of the road or whatever, before you change this with your brakes being applied, you can remove this cap here at the end and put this, called a caging bolt. You can put that bolt in there, turn it and lock it, and when you tighten it up, it pulls this spring back, which releases your brakes so that you can tow and get the vehicle moved out of the road into a safe location where you could possibly service it. These caging bolts can be stored right here on the side of the brake chamber, but personally I don't want to do that. Once it's on the vehicle, I'll store it there for now, but once it's on the truck or bus, this will be kept inside, and that way it's not getting rusted up or seized up inside this aluminum housing from corrosion. It's just one of them things you have to be smart about when you work on it. Be careful and everything will be okay. But I'm happy to have this stuff on hand to use if I ever need it. And there's a possibility with the stuff we have that I'll have to change these at some point down the road. I hope this helps somebody. I'm no expert mechanic. I'm kind of learning this stuff. Just wanted to share what I had. For somebody that might be thinking about getting into the air brake systems and kind of unsure and hesitant of it, the possibilities. My biggest fear was getting out somewhere and brake chamber go down and having my brake set beside the road and not have any way to repair it. So we got that took care of now. Hopefully if that happens, we can get them fixed and be back on the road doing what we need to do. So you know, got the diaphragms. If that's all that's bad on the service brake side, we can just change that and go back at it and use the old rear half, or we've got a whole new unit to replace. And if the front diaphragm goes bad or a brake chamber, we've got that ready to replace as well. But air brakes, for any of you that's not used or drove or have any experience with an air brake system, they are the safest brake that you can have. Basically, you've got a compressor that fills a reservoir tank, just like an air compressor that you use at home. Is the way it works. It runs off your engine, it fills those reservoirs. Then when you apply the brake pedal, you have a valve that disperses the air to the wheels, and when that air comes in here and pushes out, that's going to apply your brake. When you let off the brake, the air is vented back out into the atmosphere and your compressor refills the tank. On the parking brake side, you have a knob that you pull out. When you pull that knob out to set your brake, it releases the air from this side of the chamber on your parking brake side, allows that spring to push and set your brakes. So there's no air in this system here. When you release your brakes, it puts air into this side, pushes that spring back. That allows your vehicle to roll, and that air pressure holds that spring back so that your brakes don't set until you get to where you're going and set your parking brake back again. Now if your air system gets low, let's say your compressor gets bad or you get a major air leak somewhere, you're not going to lose your brakes fully. What's going to happen when that air pressure drops down to a certain point, your brakes are going to automatically apply, which means this spring brake's going to apply, and you're going to have brakes to those 2 rear wheels, or ever how many rear wheels you have, or trailer brakes, or whatever. That's going to lock up and stop you unless your brakes are overheated or something like that, to where they don't have the braking power they need. So it's a real good setup. It's just something new to me. Well, as far as working on it, it's new to me. I've drove air brakes and been around them and all that, but as far as actually working on them and knowing the important things, I'm learning. So if anybody's got any other advice in this, leave it in the comments. I appreciate you watching. Hopefully it's helped somebody. And, you know, don't be afraid of getting something with air brakes. Just study and learn how it all works, so that if you do have problems, you are capable of making the repairs and making them safely. But the main thing is never mess with the back half of a brake chamber. Never mess with this, cutting it or anything like that. If it's an old style, don't ever take the band off back here. But hope everybody has a good day. If you will, please like, subscribe, comment. Thumbs ups really help. And we will catch you on the next one.